Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this session, the circular economy, how to be part of a potential £7 billion growth in GDP. I guess one way is not to give 39 billion to Europe, maybe that's, but anyway, that's maybe another conversation for another time. And the role of the construction sector in that. I'm Professor Rob Holdway from Brunel University and Giraffe Innovation. If any of you are interested, Brunel, I have to get the plugs in, shameless plugs, but Brunel has a stand, F90, just in the waste zone back there. We'd love to talk to you about collaboration and also the work of our brilliant design students, obviously the best university in the UK and if not the world. So happy to talk to you about that and the role of Brunel. If any of you want to tweet, by the way, if you could go to @futurebuild now. Tweet nice things, please, because obviously we know where you are. So has anyone got anything nice? Hello, Vera. Nice things to tweet. The other thing is also, can you try and think of some intelligible questions, or think of some questions? We'll decide whether they're intelligible or not for the expert panelists as well. That'd be great. So I'll just introduce the panel briefly, so you know who's going to present. From the nearest to me away is Mike Pitts, the Deputy Challenge Director for Transforming Construction, Innovate UK. Then we have Wayne Hubbard, the Chief Executive Officer for London Waste and Recycling Board, LWAB, as you might know the acronym. We have Timothee Duret, Technology and Organics Director from Veolia UK, sitting in the middle. Then we have Petran van Heel. You're not from ABN AMRO, are you? It's not here. So you're not who's on the list. I'll introduce him in a minute. That's very professional, isn't it? Okay, I'll come back to you. I thought you were from ABN AMRO, so you're not. Okay. And you're definitely not Claire, because Claire's sitting on the end. Maybe. Curtis Thomas, the CEO of the British Board of Agreement. Apologies for that. Where's your badge?
I put it in my pocket.
So look at
UK Green Building Council.
Yeah, no, but you're not on the list. Okay. Alastair, Mant, the Head of Business Transformation. You all know him anyway. You don't need an introduction. The UK Green Building Council. You'll need that later for the drinks, probably. But anyway.
For drinks.
Right. Anyway, the circular economy, we all think we know what it is, so we won't go into that in too much detail. But from a construction sector sense, and you look at the importance of this sector, it's 9% of the UK economy, 10% of the workforce. The built environment, according to Innovate UK, so maybe I'm stealing a stat here, contributes or drives about 43% of the UK economy, roads, rail, office, manufacturing as well. So it's significantly important. However, it's kind of artisanal in many ways, in many respects, including how it goes about things, how it commissions things, and what it does with those things. So can it learn lessons from other sectors? Now, I've been quite lucky. In the last year, I've been working with the Red Bull Advanced Technology, the technology arm of the Formula 1 team, and I've always said, if we were going to design a building or construction, we wouldn't do it how it currently is. So it's a massive provocation. You'll see on the Brunel stand, for obvious reasons, we have magnesium, die-cast magnesium and aluminium used in Tesla components as well. They think about things in a completely different way than the construction sector. So it's a massive provocation for you guys as well. The other thing that kind of baffles me in many ways is I've seen some stuff from Cambridge on tensegrity. Well, Buckminster Fuller was talking about this in the 60s. It's one of Dyson's heroes, Buckminster Fuller. So the great engineering principles have been out there, but new processes of additive manufacturing are affording us new ways of thinking about these technologies. So there's some great opportunities to take things that already exist and do something with new enabling technologies with them. The other thing, I don't want to paint a sort of dystopian view, but somewhere in the region of the city the size of London is added to the world's population every 38 days. We know that there'll be 5 billion people living in cities, and yet they're still the main driver for economic growth. The other thing about cities, which I didn't realize until I looked at some of the stats, is that 90% of urban dwellers breathe air that's unsafe, and it kills about 4.2 million people a year globally, and this is according to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. When you think about that as a system of production and consumption and just a well-being generally, we couldn't do worse if we tried. If we tried to design a system that was really poor, you probably wouldn't even set those ambitious goals, and that's the situation we're in. The other thing I just wanted to say about is ecological footprinting, and if you think about the ecological footprint of us as individuals, we each have about 1.8 global hectares, which is about 2 football pitches. So you have 1.8 global hectares, Wayne has 1.8 global hectares, each you do. London's ecological footprint is 49 million global hectares. And I was looking at this. It's equivalent to about 27.2 million people. We've got a population of 9 million, thereabouts, in London. So we're currently, our ecological footprint is about 3 times the population. And I know Ben from Veolia will be Googling this now and checking my stats, but anyway. And the ecological footprint of London is about 293 times its actual physical area. That's twice the UK or the size of Spain. And yet we're talking about maybe that 60% of the built infrastructure required by 2050 hasn't been built yet, hasn't been designed and hasn't been installed. So if any of this talk is about living sustainable, which isn't a great phrase anywhere, it's dream world stuff in many ways. So how can we do better? That's a provocation, isn't it? I knew that would get your attention, Wayne. The other thing that's kind of weird, we talk about there's too many people on the planet. I actually had a conversation with Prince Philip about this, and he actually told me there's too many people on the planet. Don't have any more kids. I thought I was a bit rich considering some of his kids, but anyway, oh, by the way, this is being live streamed. Have to be careful, actually. Anyway, I also suggested to him that fat people should pay more to fly, but he seemed to like that idea. Anyway, I thought I'd see it in the press. But what's going on in the world at the moment is kind of inexplicable. Hungary have just announced, and you've seen it, Hungary have just announced that actually mothers with more than 4 kids will get a lifetime exemption from paying income tax. And you can get a government subsidy of £6,850 towards a 7-seat vehicle if you've got more than 3 children. You can get a loan. And this is a member of the European Union. I don't want to get on a Brexit debate, but there's some crazy things going on. But this is inexplicable. Some of these policies, I mean, that's an anti-immigration policy, apparently. But, you know, encouraging people to have 4 children and giving loans for it, this is ridiculous, and this is part of the EU. So I think we can, the provocation is, and you're going to hear from our speakers, we can lead the way in the UK. There's some very good things that we can do, and there's also a lot of insanity going on out there. Anyway, that's my therapy session over with. So let me start by introducing. I should have said at the beginning it's being live streamed, by the way. In fact, I should have told myself that, and I might have couched some of the things I've got to do. The other thing, also, in your questions, I'd like to give it, because I've got to fill this in. We want to know circular economy challenge. Any recommendations by action, the government or the sector as a whole? So in your questions, or you've got any comments to make on that, we would really appreciate your feedback. So I'm delighted to introduce Mike Pitts. Mike, I'll just do my job more effectively this time. Mike is Deputy Challenge Director for Transforming Construction, and that's the government's industrial strategy programme linked to the sector deal and managed by Innovate UK. Mike actually holds a PhD in organic chemistry and spent his early career in several technology spin-outs, so he's got a very good background as well. Mike and I also judge sustainability awards together for another organisation, and it's irritating how much we agree on things. So I like a good argument. So over to you, Mike. Thanks.
Great. Good afternoon.
Do you want to stand up?
And I think we've already learned that this is going to be quite an informal session, so I'll try it again. Good afternoon. I can just about hear you, that's good. So, as Rob said, I'm the Deputy Challenge Director for one part of the industrial strategy, the bit that's looking to transform the way the construction sector works. So we're taking it from its existing approach at the moment, which is, as Rob was saying, kind of artisanal, and moving it towards a kind of process-driven approach, bringing in the best of digital and manufacturing technologies. And what I would suggest, and my thesis for today, is that that opens up a whole new way that circular economy type business models can actually start to become part of the way we deliver the built environment. We're quite a way off, but the opportunity's there. So, the challenge itself is part of the industrial strategy. It's what we in Innovate UK, as part of UKRI, are delivering the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. And the programme is 170 million over the next 3.5 years, because we're a bit into it already. And what we're trying to do is shift the way the sector works towards manufacturing our buildings, digitally designing our buildings and managing them through their life in a different way, and powering buildings, integrating components that allow buildings to generate their own energy. But we're not doing this in isolation. This is in part of the construction sector deal. Government is going to create some of the market pull for that and change the way it procures the buildings we, as a nation, pull together. So our social infrastructure in particular, we're starting especially with the kind of schools program. So building schools cheaper, faster, with greater certainty. These are some of the drivers we have. And then starting to expand that lessons out across all sorts of infrastructure, hospitals, roads, prisons, and moving on from the program and those lessons into, say, the housing sector and other areas, and wider economic infrastructure. So the pull comes from the Treasury in the form of the Infrastructure and Projects Authority and 5 government departments that between them purchase tens of billions of pounds worth of buildings every year, saying from this year onwards, they have a presumption in favour of a kind of off-site approach. So if you want to get some idea, basically we're moving towards taking a platform approach to the way we deliver buildings, so a product platform architecture approach. The simplest way to think about this is we're going to specify a Lego kit from which we will be procuring all the components we need to put together our buildings. So we'll do this for schools to start with. If you're interested in understanding this, there's a quick URL there. Go and see this work that's been done by Bryden Wood. And if you want to hear more from Bryden Wood and about the wider program, we've got a session tomorrow in the Innovation Zone over there. Really, taking this kind of platform architecture approach means we'll be, rather than drawing on skilled labor, we'll be drawing on manufacturing supply chains to pull the components we need together, which will be digitally designed, working in a much more outcome-based approach with clients, and then assembling them to form the buildings we need. This platform approach is what's driven some of the most interesting innovation over the years. So not only is it the way automotive boosted productivity, so you know there's common components in an Audi as there is in a Skoda. The different bits come together. No one would build a car by delivering all the various components to your driveway and a series of skilled labourers coming and putting it together for you, and it looking a bit like every other car, but not exactly the same as any other car. Because that's stupid. That's not the way to boost productivity, and we're doing that with buildings now, and we need to move towards a manufacturing approach. So it's that definition around the chassis that allows a very complicated supply chain to work very efficiently. But the same things happen in digital technologies. So a lot of things are delivered as services now, and I'm a big fan of innovation that moves towards delivering things as services rather than selling stuff. Because that's really what we're doing with things like cars and buildings, is we're selling stuff. But really, they offer a whole load of functions. And coming back to things like schools and hospitals, there's things they're there to do. We want to maximize what they're built for. And that's taking that whole life thinking. And as we set up a platform that allows that, we're also setting up a platform that's going to allow for resource-efficient approaches. But what we're not trying to do is deliver some kind of standardized outcome. We're not into volumetric buildings. So if you're looking at this 2x2 matrix, you can see we're looking at that top corner. So we want to standardize the process, but still produce bespoke solutions. Again, coming back to thinking about that Lego kit approach. That'll create, as I said, this whole new ecosystem that draws on supply chains rather than a skilled workforce. There'll always be a place for that, of course, but we're fairly convinced this will start to mean much more productive delivery of the kind of things we need. These are the kind of targets we're looking at. This is the Construction 2025 program and the targets that we've adopted as within the program. So what does this mean for the circular economy? This is, when I used to work on the resource efficiency program within Innovate UK, this is the way we kind of thought about it. These are the kind of tight loops we're trying to bring stuff back. As a chemist, I was obviously very interested in the kind of raw materials through to end of life part of it. But design's so important, and that's exactly what we're talking about here. Design has such an input in terms of setting this framework out. That's a $5 for the design.
Oh, design,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
so what does it mean for the built environment? Where are kind of repair, reuse, remanufacture kind of models? The bigger those kind of circles you get, probably the less efficient, because the more energy you're putting in. So you want to keep them fairly tight. And here's some examples that we kind of either saw or observed in that program related to buildings or funded directly. So here's some nice work by Price and Myers optimizing in the design part of the process, the kind of structural components in building quite a large framework in a building. Again, using mathematical modeling, optimizing the lengths, putting the strong stuff where you need to and the light stuff where you don't. And they're able to save really quite a large amount, well, as you can see, a third of the mass in beams. So that's a reduce approach. When we're designing office layouts or university buildings, universities love to put these huge lecture theatres up because they need them on the first day of term when all the students are in, and then they never use them again and never fully occupied. Better use of space within design can have a huge impact. And there's a company there called First Planner who are experts at this. They've saved councils millions in rather than building or extending schools, just doing a better job of optimizing the space they already have. Replacing materials we don't want to use has been quite a furore over things like the concrete issue in The Guardian in the last week or two, but even going through to things like difficulties in accessing, getting hold of bricks and other types of raw materials. ModCell, I'm sure are here somewhere today, have done a brilliant job in moving to kind of straw bale approach in buildings. Really, really fantastic. We've supported them quite a lot. These are some of the developments that are available now, and they fly. I mean, the demand for these developments when they come along massively outstrips supply. Even things like repair. I talked about repair being quite an interesting option. If we're going to make concrete, let's make it self-healing. And then back down to things like reuse and remanufacture. So this is the water polo arena. It wasn't not far away from here, London 2012. This has now gone to 3 different locations. It was designed with fixed, very similar to what I'm talking about in a platform approach, fixed lengths of steel materials, ESG. They've taken it down and they've moved it to 2 different locations around the world. So keep reusing that structure. Similar ideas through to other shorter lifetime buildings. So demountable buildings you can take apart, rebuild again after a short life. By the 3rd time you've done it, they've basically paid for themselves. Again, on the Olympic site, this is Chobham Manor. This is now the site where that picture's taken that I took is now a huge tower block. This was the kind of showroom to see what it looked like. It's now gone to several other locations to be a showroom. So that's my kind of thesis laying out. There's lots of good ideas. The platform will allow it to go. If you want to learn more about the Industrial Strategy Programme, here's some links, or follow me on Twitter. It's Pizzo.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Anyone else on them?
27 seconds left. That's pretty impressive. We'll do questions at the end because then we can see what the threads and common themes are, and also we're tight on time. So, Wayne Hubbard from London Waste and Recycling Board. If you just like the CEO of the LWOB, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I will. Yeah.
I like your tie as well. It's very.
Thank you. Thank you. I've changed it.
Very nice. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks everybody. Thanks for the introduction, such as it was. My name is Wayne Hubbard. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the London Waste and Recycling Board. We are a partnership between the Mayor of London, a partnership of the Mayor of London and London's municipalities, 33 municipalities. Quite an interesting role that we inhabit between the deliverer of services and the strategic policymaker. And it gives us the opportunity to kind of help with delivery, help boroughs recycle more waste, but also to do more strategic thinking around things like the circular economy. So we have 2 programs basically aligned to those 2 activities. And I haven't got any slides. I'm just going to talk to you briefly today about what I consider to be the issue that we're trying to solve, where cities fit in with that, how the circular economy can help alleviate some of those issues, and where LWOB fits into that. So the problem. So, I mean, there's loads of waste from construction, and we are constructing a lot of stuff. Rob said, and it's a great kind of point to think about, that 60% of the infrastructure that's needed by 2050 has not yet been built, which is, it's kind of a terrifying thought from a certain perspective. From my perspective, it's a fantastic opportunity to make sure, one, that infrastructure is built differently, and 2, that maybe we don't need to build so much infrastructure using some of the techniques and opportunities that the circular economy will offer us. I'll come on to that later. So London consumes apparently more than 20 million tonnes of construction material each year and produces about 10 million tonnes of construction waste. And that is important because of something I'm going to tell you about later. And it's a big sector. the construction sector represents about 5% of London's economy, and London is one of the biggest economies as a city in the world. I think it's something like the 6th biggest municipal economy in the world, and construction represents a reasonable proportion of that. And in London, there are around 5 million employees, and 1 in 20 of those are employed in construction. So that 7 billion opportunity that this session is about, we think that in terms of the built environment, we can realise between 3 and 5 billion pounds a year by adopting a circular economy approach. And the actual range that LWOB came up with was the opportunity of the circular economy in the 5 sectors in our circular economy route map, which I recommend you go and look at. The opportunity is between 7 and 11 billion, and built environment is by far and away the biggest of those opportunities, the next being food of between 2 and 4 billion, and then the next textiles of about 1 billion, and then electrics and plastics a much smaller amount. So where do cities sit in this picture? Rapid urbanisation is happening globally. And an interesting and important reason why we need a circular economy is that the global middle class will soon be, for the first time ever, the majority. There's a definition of middle class. I don't think it means that globally we'll all be reading The Guardian. Maybe it does, I don't know. But there's a definition for middle class at a certain income level. And once you hit that certain income level, the danger is we'll all be wanting to consume stuff. And this is why we're going to be building potentially and constructing more buildings to meet the demand for that rapidly expanding middle class. And as we know, most people in the planet now live in cities, and that's only going to get that's only going to be more people are going to live in cities. So cities are we like to say the engine room of the circular economy. If you can solve cities, if you can get cities right, you can create a circular economy. So how can a circular economy help? We had some work done by Arup, which looked at 9 circular economy initiatives. And if those 9 circular economy initiatives were taken up rapidly, they estimated that waste in London could be reduced by 60% by, I think it was 2041. 60%. So London's waste is what? Around about 20 million tonnes-ish. It'll tell me it's a different number. This is a bit less than that. And we can reduce it by more than half by adopting these 9 initiatives, which are additive manufacturing, modularity, leased assets, smart predictive maintenance, urban analytics, exchange platforms, sharing platforms, urban farming, and laser-etched branding. So getting rid of packaging. So those 9 initiatives. So it's on our website if you want to look at the report. So it's a significant opportunity. More than that, I think, the circular economy through sharing, through exchange, through modularity, can help manage growth. And that's actually the reason that LWOB became involved in this in the first place, because the Mayor of London asked us to try and predict what the waste management implications of London's growth from a city of about 8 million people to a city of about 11 million people between now and 2050, what that growth would mean in terms of waste management. And the typical way to do that would be to say, oh, each person will create, a ton of waste or whatever it will be, multiply that by 11 million. There you go, 11 million tonnes of waste produced each year. We need 1 incinerator, a MRF, and 2 composters, or whatever it would be. But we said we're going to have a circular economy. We're going to reduce the amount of waste that London produces, and to do that, we need to adopt some of these initiatives. It had a strange effect because this was a lobbying document to Treasury. So waste management dropped down the list of asks because we said we don't need so much capital infrastructure. Now, you might disagree with that as Veolia, as the waste management industry. The waste management industry, by the way, does disagree with that. So there is a tension here, which we discovered, we haphazardly kind of navigated into. But that's our contention. So what can the London Waste and Recycling Board do very quickly? We operate and run a range of initiatives to support London's municipalities and also London's businesses, crucially. And for me, this is the circular economy magic. So we sprinkle our special circular economy water on, I'm going to go with this analogy, on the allotment that is London, that is London's circular economy business allotment. I like it, I'm going to go with it. So we have a venture capital fund for circular economy businesses. We're about to launch a circular economy accelerator, and we've got 6 companies who will be part of that accelerator in the built environment, this particular cohort. We have an advanced London program that offers business support to SMEs operating in the circular economy, and they've got a stall just behind me. And just for the avoidance of doubt, this is what we mean at OWUB when we talk about the circular economy. And this is based on work that Accenture Strategy did when they reviewed 100 businesses in North America and Europe and tried to identify what made them circular economy businesses. And these are the business models they came up with and which we've adopted as well. So that's recycling in, where you take a recycled product to make your thing. You make your thing recyclable, designed for durability. So you make your thing last, you make it more modular, you make it more repairable. The sharing economy and servitization, so product as a service. And in fact, one way that we can measure the success of a circular economy is how that change of ratio from the consumption of things to the use of things. So we expect more use and less consumption. So hopefully what we want to do is accelerate the circular economy and move people from consumers of stuff to users of services. Lots to talk about there, I'm sure, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, you got slides?
I got slides, yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, this is Timothee Duret. He's a Technology and Organics Director for Veolia, the UK's largest waste recycling and recovery group. I have to read this properly because they're obviously the largest and the best. We have some Veolia people in the audience, so that's obviously true. Although Adam from Suez is quite good, but you know, it's all relevant. You're responsible for driving operational efficiency and innovation across more than 30 organic, mechanical feedstock supply chains. I thought I'd just tell you what your job was.
Thank you.
Great.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, yeah, I'm an engineer, basically, working at Veolia, a director, and my role is to find solutions to the challenges we have in terms of recycling. So I'm going to incorporate this into the circular economy, the topic of today, and how we can benefit out of it. So why going circular? Long story short, it's because we don't have really the choice. They are a necessity why we need to go circular. Most of you, 9 out of 10 activities here will produce waste during their activity, so they will have to dispose out of it. Right. There's a scarcity of the raw material. If you're using sands, minerals, anything, there's less and less available from the environment. But there's also an opportunity that today we announced is 7 billion for London. We measured in different way, can be up to 30 billion for the UK as we've discussed. So there's an opportunity for the businesses to reduce their costs, to not pay as much as they do today to dispose their waste. There's an opportunity to get more employment because it's a different type of activity if we recycle in terms of just dispose into a landfill. And there's a need. So these are the 2 drivers of going circular, as you've got here. These are some key facts about the scale of the opportunity. As I've mentioned, so 600 billion in savings. Again, less disposal cost for the byproduct of your processes, of the manufacturing, of the activity, or here being construction and demolition activity. And 29 billion has been calculated, which is 1.8% of GDP for the UK alone. It's a huge figure and a huge opportunity. So how do we implement that? We need to go away from this linear system and look at stage by stage what we can change in terms of, we mentioned earlier about the design, very important, but also the manufacturing of the different items. So the different steps are, as I just mentioned, about changing the model, focusing on quality. If we want to replace raw material into a manufacturing process, we need to ensure that what we're going to achieve is a similar, if not better quality than the raw material being used. Otherwise, there won't be any attraction for it, any demand. The second thing is about the better supply chain pricing. Any transition has a cost. It's different skills, it's different facilities, and that's why I mentioned about investment into new facilities. Veolia, as a UK leader in the recycling industry in the UK, is committed to spend another £1 billion by 2025. It's a huge amount. It will be a recycling process for plastics, glass, fiber, any type of streams. And finally, to develop a customer partnership. So in my point of view, for today, it's a key outcome, key takeaway. The recycling will do its role into the circular economy only if there is a demand of the recycled product. Only if we match the quality, only if there's sufficient volume, and only if the location is suitable for the activity. So the demand for this material is really important, and also the duration of this demand. So if we produce a recycled item, and we have to invest, obviously we need to have some visibility over 2, 5, 10 years, depending on the size of the investment. So I'm going to show you now some concrete examples that we've already implemented at different stage. Most of the examples are for municipal waste. So Veolia is collecting waste from 10 million households in the UK. But we can apply exactly the same logic for the construction and demolition with inert waste or packaging waste. So the first one is a cullet facility, so a glass treatment facility. So we collect the glass from households, it goes to a sorting facilities, and after, in the middle, you can see a 3D model of the facility, which is now in operation for 2 years in Liverpool. We transform this waste into a product, and there is a high demand for this product. So we sell it to one of our partners, Knauf Insulation. So they've committed for 10 years. We'll buy you the material out of this facility for 10 years at an agreed price. And this is what we need to invest into more plants. The second one is the start of a partnership with Deluxe, which is today on this audience. So the principle is we collect the leftovers paints from household waste recycling centers. We mix them together. We add the right additives into it to ensure we achieve the right quality for Deluxe to reuse into their shops. So we are a couple of months away to make this happen. And the scale is obviously, we're targeting a couple of million liters per annum of this recycling route. Next one is famous, but very important, even more than since Wayne, you told me earlier that the food recycling in London is about 3 to 4 billion pounds in terms of opportunity for London out of the 7 billion. So you can think how important it is. So this process is happening. We turn the green waste, the food waste, through a composting process, and we sell it back to agriculture, local farmers, but also into bags that we can deliver to anyone online. Next one is to produce aggregate suitable for the concrete manufacturing, and we produce this from ash, from the energy recovery facility. The residual waste, which is used to produce energy, the leftover is ash, and we are now able to transform this into a product, really, usable product.
What is the product?
Sorry?
What was the product?
On the right, it's pellets of aggregates. So it can be used as a filler for construction, for stabilization, for any sort of application. But there's, as we discussed earlier again, there's a challenge in terms of the quality specification. Obviously, if it's used in the building industry, you need to make sure if it's safe, it ticks all the boxes in terms of certification. And this is a lot of work at the front end of the project to make sure that it's safe to use. And we got a last project which is going to be released in the next 2 to 3 months, which is about more applicable to the construction and waste industry. Is an application, an online application, where if you are a manager of a construction site or demolition, and you've got waste on your site, you can use the app, and you're going to see in live which skip companies around you can come and collect, and you will know the price of the disposal or the rebate if it has value. So this will be kind of a transfer of the Uber activity applied to waste management for construction sites. So it's waste box. It's going to be released very soon. So this really, for me, was to stress 2 things. Is in order to amplify the role of the recycling into the circular economy, we need a demand from the end market to close the loop, but also we need a certain framework. There's been the waste and resource strategy released by the government a couple of months ago, and it really helps us as a company, as an industry, to work together into a stable context with visibility. And we, from a Veolia point of view, we really favor and support this initiative from the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, this, by the way, in case you didn't recognise him, is Alastair Mant. He's the head of business transformation at the UK Green Building Council. He leads the scoping and delivery of projects to provide the industry with the tools and guidance it requires to radically improve the sustainability of the built environment. And if any of you got any suggestions about additional tools, I'm sure Alastair would like to hear about them. So thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. Hi over in the corners. It's very wide space, isn't it? I think I need to be a gecko or an owl to kind of see everyone, but thanks for coming along. Hopefully that will change quite soon from my face to a slide for you all. Before I kind of go into how we can be part of this opportunity, I also have my own stats and just want to put out there about why we need to take that opportunity forward. So we're consuming resources planetary-wide at the pace of 1.5 planets. Clearly, we've only got one, so we're eating into that capital rather than living off the interest. And we're expected to be using 3 times as much raw material by 2050 as we are today. And from our cities to have 3 times as much waste output by the end of the century. And as we've heard, I think in this session already, but I was over there, as many of you were earlier as well, I expect, is that 60% of all the material use in the UK is from excavation, construction and demolition, and the same for the waste that comes out the other end. Amazingly, 10 to 20% of all the materials that go onto a site in construction go off straight away as waste and are never actually used straight into the waste stream. Between May 2016 and May 2017, the cost of construction materials went up by 5%. And we've got our major contractors with about a 1% profit margin. So clearly, for global and very obvious, so planetary and population, well, for our civilization reasons, we need to change. But it also seems like there's a really compelling business case there. And McKinsey put it at a 4% increase in GDP in the next 10 years if we take the opportunities that already exist. So what I want to do today, very quickly, just put forward 4 ideas about how we can help make that change. And we really do need to start closing that gap very quickly. To start with, we need to get really hungry for this. And I'm speaking to the converted, I know this. There's probably not that many asset managers in here. There's probably not that many investors into buildings. I won't ask you to put your hand up. But I'm speaking to the people who are already into this. But we've got to find the way to move this agenda forward much more quickly. We need to have the stats. We need to know why it's a problem. We need to believe in it. And we also need to have those solutions. And we need to convince people. We need to have some very difficult discussions, quite often with the people that we work with, people in the C-suite, your chief exec, your CFO, also your development managers if you're in that area, your colleagues who are maybe architects and engineers who haven't bought into this yet. And we need to help them understand and help them realize why we have to move this quickly. But also, very importantly, don't just come with the doom, but come with the solutions as well. And they do increasingly exist. But what we've got is a real systems failure. We've got a real market failure. And so I think a big part of the solution is going to be around policy. And it's not as sexy as getting involved in innovation and technology and talking about that and what's going on and spending our time in it. But I really think the industry needs to come together, and we need to figure out what it is that we want from the government in terms of progressive policy in this area. In the industrial strategy in 2017, it actually says that they will move the UK to a circular economy model. And we've got some great movement coming out of the Challenge Fund as well. The Environment Bill is gearing up for it, and we've been working with our members as the UK Green Building Council with the industry and DEFRA and BEIS around the resources and waste strategy. And there's a few things we can really do there. Looking at data, all the stats that you've heard here and over there around the data on waste, I don't know how much I trust them, actually. That's the sad thing. We know there's a big problem. We don't know exactly how big it is, and we don't know how much exactly on different waste streams and where they come from. So there's a big piece to play from government, I think, or we think, that's what we've heard from our members, in order to improve the data accuracy and how we can use it. There's a big piece around carrots and stick, or I don't know if you had a session earlier, a few hours ago, I think it was a carrot-shaped stick is what someone said we needed. And we need something like that. Look at the financial instruments. Maybe we need higher landfill tax. Maybe we can play with capital allowances. Maybe we push people towards reusing products and remanufactured materials due to lower or no VAT. And hey, an upside of Brexit is that we'll be able to have more play with that. But we won't go there, will we?
Why not?
It's very easy to say to people we need to move to a circular economy. We've been working on a project, and what we found is that we need to get really specific. The industry needs to get very specific with the questions it asks of each other and from those beyond the industry. We need to ask different questions. If we keep following the same model with the same questions and the same answers about how we value, how we procure, we're going to end up, I believe, and we believe, with the same product. We need to fundamentally change. And again, it comes back to asking ourselves and those who work with very difficult questions, but also specific questions. It's not just about saying, can you make this in a circular economy model, but actually what do we want? Is it around percentage of reused materials? Is it about servitization? Is it about disassembly at the end of life? In fact, hopefully that's not the end of life. Are you really focused on adaptability for the future? Sometimes those things will clash, and we're going to have to work through it on each project. We've got to at least ask them to start moving. And this is a huge challenge, as I've said. It's too big for one person, one organization. It's actually probably too big for one industry. We're talking about a circular economy. That's a global thing. It's great that we've got leaders, and in a report that we launched last week called Leading the Way, where we've surveyed our 50 Gold Leaf members, saw that 40% of them this year actually now have a public commitment to a circular economy. That's up from 6% last year. So that's great. And we're seeing all through today here, I've heard brilliant examples of leadership. And we need those people to speed off from the peloton and race away. But very quickly, we need to catch them up. We need to work together to learn from them. Hopefully they're going to be helping us out by passing some tips down the line as well. We can't make a circular economy with just a few of us trying to do it. We need to look across the industry. Where is it that buildings are going to come down? Where are we going to store those materials? Where's the next big phase of development? And we need to not be reinventing the wheel all the time. We need to learn from each other. We don't have time, and we don't have the money in the system either for us all to go off and re-innovate and invent all across the supply chain. So my last slide is just to try and bring that into obviously, if I and UKGBC believe that, that's what we've been doing ourselves. And we are. That's what we're trying to do. The last year, we've been running a circular economy program, and we've done a number of interventions around awareness raising, building support through the industry, and education programs, which is vital, and the policy work. And what we're launching on April 4th is a guide for developers to actually give them practical tips about how they specify circular principle buildings, so at the design stage, so REBA stages 1 and 2. What are the questions they should ask? What are the barriers they're going to come up against? What are the examples of how people have got around those barriers? And that's really just stage 1. But April 4th, come along to it. My colleague Anna is here, who was talking across the way a bit earlier. She's been leading it brilliantly. We're very happy to discuss after this as well. But come along on April the 4th, because that's just the beginning of that. We've put that onto paper, but we need to get it into practice, and it's going to be iterative. We want to work with the industry to build on that, learn, and then spread the message out again, hopefully with even more solutions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Alastair. Claire, would you like to?
Hey, thanks.
I'm delighted to introduce Claire Curtis-Thomas. I'll tell you, she's a mechanical engineer, which is impressive for the University of Cardiff, and an honorary PhD in technology, which is that from Cardiff as well?
Actually, Stafford, and I was just thinking there's another one.
You've got so many, you've forgotten
Yes,
where they're
I'm
from.
sorry.
Brilliant.
Just
Also, you were Dean of Engineering and Business Development at the University of Wales, and obviously you might know Claire, former MP for Crosby.
Yes.
And what's quite interesting about your biographical notes, actually, on a BBA, which I hope people might not know what the organisation is, so if you could introduce that as well. Committed to the eradication of discrimination and breaking down the boundaries which preclude people from reaching their potential.
Yeah.
So I'm quite interested in that as well.
Okay, great.
30 seconds.
Could I just observed, some of you may have seen my colleague from Innovate UK. His phone, did you look at the back of it? It has the Welsh dragon on it. I'm so pleased I am not alone.
You're not, no.
I'm off to Murrayfield on Saturday.
I've already given him grief about
Have
it.
you? Sorry about the English. Oh, excellent. Well done, that woman.
Right, that's the end of your time. Right, that's enough. Yeah.
Right, diolch. Right, let's get started then. Okay, it's been really interesting to hear my colleagues this afternoon talk about the circular economy. Who doesn't want to use something that's already had a life? We all want to be in that space, don't we? But the thing that really prevents that from happening is you're not very sure what you're getting. And that's a real major inhibitor to people picking up recycling and actually delivering it every day. In order to do that, in order to buy in volume, you've got to be pretty confident about what you're getting. So where does the BBA fit into that? What is it that we do? Well, I have the best job on the planet because I look, and my staff look at new products every day that they're going to enter the construction market. We love new stuff. Maybe we don't fit terribly well in the circular economy now, but we see a lot of innovation within the United Kingdom. But I have some concerns about the innovations that we're currently seeing. So let's get started. Okay, so you've seen, I think, plenty of this. I don't need to talk to you anymore about circular economy and what that means, but it's out there, and for one, I'm really glad that it is. Okay, so there's been some conversation today about off-site modular systems and repurposing existing buildings. And that's a great idea, of course. We want to do that. But what are the main inhibitors which preclude us from doing that at this time? We have to ensure that products comply with specifications that have been allocated to those particular products. Really tricky. That sounds easy, but it's very difficult. We've got to have very good testing and assessment regimes to ensure that the thing that you're using is actually fit for purpose. So as we go to modular off-site systems, that's absolutely great, but you've got to have very clear processes which document the products going into your modular system, so those like Veolia that come afterwards can be confident that what they're going to be recycling is something that they understand and is also going to be fit for purpose. You've got to get that right. If If you don't have very good specification right at the very front and thorough testing, then by the time that product has finished its life, it may not have another life, because nobody wants, nobody wants ambiguity in product specification. Okay, so the importance of being compliant with building regulations. I guess I'm looking around the room here. There's going to be a lot of us who understand the building regulations and why it's very important that you have products that are appropriately specified. Can I just say to you, the BBA, what we do at the BBA is ensure we look at products relative to all sorts of regulations and guidance and so on and so forth. But one of the things that I've been talking to our clients about for a very long time now is the need to include in any specification, or rather certification of their product, details about the recyclability of that product. Now, you'd think that's a no-brainer, wouldn't you? It's really very, very simple. They're not budging. They're not budging. They're not coming to me and saying, will you please assess this against its potential to be recycled? They're not doing that. And they're not doing that because they're not asked to do that. If they were asked to do that, it would make people's lives so much easier when it came to recycling. Because you could say, this is this building, these are the products that it is made up from, here is the recycling opportunity presented by those products. We would argue that it may be a main differentiator in terms of purchasing the product in the first place. So if you get it right at the beginning, you get a better outcome at the end. So, I've got to really talk to you about that. So does it really matter if the product is just so-so? Is one sort of insulation pretty much the same as the other? Well, emphatically no. Is one brick the same as another? Emphatically no. Is one bit of concrete the same as another? Emphatically no. You have thousands of products. Indeed, manufacturers get off on developing different types of products because then they have a unique selling point for their particular product. Doesn't help the circular economy, but it does on the initial sale. The BBA, unfortunately, has seen countless examples of substituted products. So that's where we've actually approved something, but when it gets to site, it's not the product that we've approved of, despite the fact that the manufacturer in many instances will have provided that product. Along the way, it gets substituted for something else, making the job of recycling the product even more difficult, but also undermining the integrity of the building that it goes into in the very first place. So a bit of a film for you.
This
Do you
old
recognise this one?
broom has had 17 new heads and 14 new handles in its time.
How the hell can it be the same bloody broom?
Well, here's a picture of it. What more proof do you need?
Yeah, well, that's a familiar story, actually. It's a familiar story, but you can see it's really flawed. So what is the primary problem then with substitution? Let's have a look at a bit of film. You need to watch this very, very carefully. When you're looking at this building, you want to check out the leading edge. So just look at the floor, sort of the 10th or the 12th floor. Watch what happens when something goes wrong and it's not to spec. Watch carefully. See it?
Blimey.
Did you all see it?
Blimey. Yeah.
Staggering, isn't it? The estimated speed of that insulation dropping to the ground was between 70 and 90 miles per hour. The weight of that system was approximately 2.3 metric tons. If you'd been underneath it, that's equivalent to being hit by 4 motorbikes. You would have been dead. So there was quite a problem with that product. Want to recycle it, anybody? You know, we looked at that. That's the only bit of film you'll see on the internet, because when there are catastrophic failures of these kinds, they usually get hatched up, and you can see why, can't you? That actually was taken in Bootle. Bloody great people. I'm a Scouser myself, an honorary Scouser. The man had been given a video recorder for Christmas. And he was standing at the bus stop opposite, and that's what he happened to see. Anybody else that's taken videos like that are really sort of jumped on by the product installer or the product manufacturer, but that guy said no, in a typical Scouser fashion. He said, you can take everything from me because I haven't got very much to begin with. And that's why we have that film today. And that, for me, is one of the very serious pieces of footage that really focus the mind on why you need to get good specification right at the beginning, and you need to have an understanding about the constituent elements of products. Okay, I've said enough of this, I think. Is the product fit for purpose? I don't want to labour the point. You've seen a lot of that. I've explained what we do. Great job, by the way. And that's it. Thank you very much indeed.
Very good. We have about 15 minutes left, and I just thought I'd start. I mean, there's so many questions. There's fascinating stuff. The importance, aside from the Welsh flag, by the way, the importance of collaboration has been mentioned quite a lot. It's quite a generic question, because I've got some very specific questions, but we'd be here all day if I asked them. But the collaboration, failure, the power of product integrity is really crucial. There's obviously something going catastrophically wrong within your supply chain. But in almost you talked also about reaching out beyond the sector and learning from other industries. You're clearly doing that as well. You're working across many different sectors within London, from textiles to construction, etc. So there might be a symbiotic thing there as well. And obviously you're relying from the automotive sector on those skills. So just maybe start with you, Mike, just to comment about who you've reached out to learn, because it's not only architects, it's the automotive sector as well. And just a comment on who you've had to go talk to and who you're working with.
I mean, we're disrupting the construction sector to some degree. We're disrupting it so before it has to disrupt it gets disrupted itself. But we're very keen to bring in knowledge from manufacturing, not just automotive, aerospace, all sorts of sectors. And we've used, because Innovate UK, we're supporting innovation across all those different sectors, we can reach out to them. So manufacturing's in there, digital, energy technologies. We want the digital sector's version of digital manufacturing. We want the digital construction. We want the manufacturing sector's version of manufacturing construction, because they've learned the hard lessons. So they're the kind of sectors we're working with, and we won't fund projects that don't see cross-sector collaboration.
Okay, I've got so short. I've got so many questions. Wayne, you talked about the broad sectors and the opportunities, and you've got 6 or so sectors. How do you seek collaboration between them?
So we produced a document back in 2015 called Towards a Circular Economy, and in that we talked about our focus areas, and we also mentioned enabling sectors. So this was based on a piece of research that in itself is based on a methodology that came from the Ellen MacArthur Policymakers Toolkit, which some of you might be aware of, if you're of that bent. But if you imagine a matrix and you have our sectors down one side, so built environment, food, textiles and fashion, electricals and plastics, and then along the top, enabling sectors who we can collaborate with to make and accelerate a circular economy. And in London, those sectors where London is particularly strong is finance, government, both national and local, digital, media, and education. So that's how we organise our approach to stakeholders, or I should say that's how we should organise it.
Okay.
We're a bit more haphazard, and it turns out you're a bit more ad hoc, but that's effectively how we'd categorise London's kind of sectors.
It's really interesting, because London is obviously, you mentioned digital, everyone mentions digital now, smart materials, smart technologies. And Timothee, you mentioned the Uber of waste as well. So Veolia has pivoted quite a lot, it sounds, with some of the new products that you're working on or launching.
In terms, sorry, I can't hear very well.
You're, I don't speak French, I apologise.
No.
We won't need to after March. You talked about the Uber of waste.
Yep.
So it's a bit like General Electric. They suddenly went from big iron to looking at Internet of Things, they had to pivot their whole business. It sounds to me like Veolia is also thinking about the new digital relationships it has to have. And 5 years ago, would Veolia be thinking about an Uber of waste as a product offering?
Yeah, probably not. And it's for us is to make sure we. Our main goal is to resolve the world. It's a simple sentence, but really to make sure that we find the right tools to achieve recycling. So yes, most of the time it's heavy investment, but using this Uber approach allows us to increase connections between people and make sure the offer and the demand are connected. And I think that's what is missing in the construction and demolition sector from a waste point of view. Is so fragmented, so segmented, that it's missing something to make sure the right material is into the right hands.
Okay, cool. I was talking to your colleague earlier about that. You should definitely look it up, because it's launched in Norway. Is it launched in Denmark or Norway?
It's working for a couple of years in Germany. Right. It's in trial in France, and it's arriving in the UK. In the next 3 months or so, we're going to launch it.
Sounds very interesting. You also mentioned about getting outside, Alastair, from the construction sector alone. In fact, you're very handy, because on my little sheet I have to write down what the government needs. You've pretty much filled it in. So, but again, you talk about collaboration and going outside much. You've got some very strong metaphors from cycling industry, etc.
I just like pictures.
Well, they're very, very strong. But
I like donuts and cycling. It was simple.
But from the UK Green Building Council, you talked about going outside, but then when you looked at all your partners, they're the same old faces.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you've got some good companies on there, but they're the same people again.
Yeah.
So isn't that a bit?
I think it's a fair challenge. I wish I had a fantastic answer for you of where we've looked outside the industry and have what the silver bullet is. The kind of positive belief I have is that technologically we can do all of this, and that a lot of it does exist. And we been running an innovation portal to actually source some of those ideas coming that are growing up, but it's very difficult for them to find their way into our market due to the way it's set up. And they don't always understand how the current the market and the supply chain works, so therefore they can't get in, and the incumbents have no idea that all of this amazing innovation exists and is out there. So we're actually, another plug for us, but we're running an innovation showcase on the 28th of this month to actually bring some of those innovators to some of our major members who are looking for that innovation. I think we need to be aware that the big players in the industry can make the change, but generally, as in every industry, they're not really set up to innovate, and the amount of innovation is incredibly low in construction and property. But we need the willingness. So a lot of it is about the culture. We need the culture and the willingness to actually look wider and ask those different questions. Because I do think the solutions are there. It's about the people. It's about the culture and the mindset.
Well, it's great to hear someone talk about people, because it tends to be a technology push approach, but it's very interesting. And Claire, from your work, I mean, that video is pretty shocking if someone had been killed, but obviously we have a very catastrophic example of Grenfell, for instance.
Yes.
So it's quite shocking that this seems to be the whole issue hasn't been resolved, and there's a whole transparency issue within the supply chain.
I think it's because it's a sort of a labyrinth of relationships. But I do have to commend the Hackett report and the government's response to that, which is the implementation of all the recommendations. So going back to basics, what they're going to do and what they have done, and there's been significant progress in this regard, is to look at the processes and put in significant more checks and balances. Now that actually is very good for the circular economy. Having a clearer understanding of what's being used, where and when. It's the most appalling thing that this has come out of a dreadful a dreadful emergency. But to have this outcome is a fantastic development and step forward, which will help us all, I'm sure.
Okay, very, very interesting. Yeah, it's tragic thing. So okay, we've got about 10 minutes. It says 7 on there, but does anyone have any questions, provocations? Wants to have an argument generally?
There's one.
Start with this lady here, please. If you could just say where you're from, please, and if it's directed at anyone in particular.
Hello, I'm Susan Schnathorst from a construction company called Osborne. I was asking a question of Veolia, actually. This, I'm assuming it's incinerator ash that you were talking about earlier that could be used in construction. I've heard a lot of, negative aspects about the chemical aspects of what would accumulate in this ash. And as we're constantly looking for cement substitutes to make our concrete less carbon intensive, it'd be lovely to have a solution. Can you tell me how progress is, developing on that to ensure us that it's not going to be full of nasties that are possibly going to leach out and we use it in our construction projects?
Yep. Sure, yeah. So this project is happening already. We don't use this aggregate to make buildings as such. We can do we got the authorization to do leisure blocks, which are used in transfer stations to make bays basically. And it's going through a certification process, which I totally agree with you. We need this certification process. We need these checks for us to be confident to invest into the technology, but also to reassure the end user. And in terms of the nasties, as you call it, it's dealt with at the front end. So when it goes out of the energy recovery facility, we got extraction system with filters, which remove that, and then it becomes an inert material. And that's this inert material that we use in the construction industry.
Yeah.
I think it'd be worth you having maybe a technical conversation later on. Gentlemen, just say where you're from, please.
My name is Sam Robinson, and I'm a student at the Centre for Alternative Technology.
Oh, great.
I'm interested in transformational change and the need, the immediate need for that kind of process to take place. And every time I come to an event like this, I think maybe this year there'll be transformational change in the running, but it's always looking ahead, and we're always looking at trying to bring in more people. And I'm rambling here, but it's kind of a desperate kind of.
Are you looking for a bit more disruption? Is that what you're trying to say?
Well, I don't understand the process that we're always looking ahead to the future, the climate change, all of the recycling, and in this case, the process of the circular economy. But the challenge, as far as I can see it, is so immediate. And I don't see that in the in the discourse, in public, in policy, in government. And I'm sorry, I'm rambling, but I'm just sort of getting a bit desperate, really.
Well, don't moan. They've had the first climate debate after discussion in the House of Parliament for 2 years the other week, so it's all good. But Mike, do you want to talk about? You've been involved in Innovate UK for a long time. Do you want to talk about some of the transformational and the immediacy of some of the stuff you've got to do?
Well, I think change can happen really, really fast, and you can see that with the kind of companies that. I was saying earlier how I'm such a fan of service-led innovation, providing the outcomes that people want to buy, and that's happening really fast. There's a lot of invested interests which you tend to hear from, but the young people aren't driving cars. They want mobility, and the big companies in the world don't own a lot of stuff. They facilitate access to services. The rise of things like Uber coming up so fast has already been used as a kind of model. The change in these companies didn't exist 10 years ago. It's happening really, really fast. And if you don't think it's coming to your sector, you're wrong. And that's the point. These business models take off really, really quickly when they do. It's getting the business model right is what happens. I think for circular economy stuff, the program we're looking at, we want to see some very concrete change within the next couple of years. We have to demonstrate that to government to justify our funding. We will be building schools cheaper and faster by the end of our program, for example. Once a business model is kind of proven, everybody races to be second. There's a very high risk in being first, and that's where our funding comes in, is to help the brave people go faster. If it's not scary, we're not interested in funding it. So I think you'll see things do move faster, but then, of course, we'll then reset our sights to what's coming next. But pace of change is much faster than everybody believes.
So, Wayne, do you talk about?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you said, the challenge is so big, you look at London, it's just so complex, it's such a big city, what can you do? We've set up programs, we're doing stuff, there's companies that are actually around, as Mike said, they wouldn't be around 10 years ago. There's a quote that I like: the pace of change has never been so fast, and it will never be so slow again. I firmly believe that. The 21st century started when the iPhone was introduced, in my view. Is that the gong?
Was that you? I thought it was
a
really good joke
going on.
That's the technology we've got here. We have a gong.
But, you know, and there's another quote that I like, which is, governments talk and cities act. So I do believe that the pace of change at national level can occasionally be quite frustrating, but cities do stuff. You know, we as cities around the world are doing stuff. And you'll see that in the States, where many cities are completely ignoring what Trump says about climate change, just getting on, especially in California, for example, and doing their own thing. So it's not all doom and gloom. Stuff is happening. And it's rapid transformation. And I think the danger for us is being able to keep up with it. That's our challenge going forward.
Yeah, because we're running out of time. But I get where you're coming from. That just two things. We'll just finally go through. I've got a question. I've got to fill in something, so we'll get you to do this. What is the one thing that government could do to help construction meet the challenge, a bit broader challenge? From a government point of view, and we know the government, well, the climate change debate had about 10 MPs in it, and it's the first time they really got together over 2 years. And it took the school kids taking a day off work to get them to do that. So, but there's one thing from a government point of view would help your business, or you can broaden it as a sector if you really want, but just one thing.
Oh dear. Right. So the one thing that I would see is the one thing that government doesn't want to do, which is actually to develop new regulation to take into account new innovations that come onto the market. And without that, that's a serious impediment to the development of the market and to changing behaviours and practices.
More regulation, you'll be popular. Right. Okay, Claire. Thank you.
I just want to make one comment as well, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
I think maybe my first slide could have said "get angry" rather than "get hungry," and 40 MPs in Parliament in 2 years to discuss climate change is not good enough. But I try not to get too downbeat on this, and there is loads of going on. But I think it's a very valid point, and I think we should all be asking it a lot more. But my one thing would be, I'm going to go today, probably be a different answer tomorrow, data. Get better data collection and get that the same across the country and across projects. We'll start to get a much better understanding, and then we'll reap those rewards.
Right. Okay. Timothee?
From my point of view, so I think the government did something quite amazing with this new resource and waste strategy being launched. It provides the whole industry a very good framework. However, there will be a consultation period of about 2 to 3 years. So it's going to take a bit of time, but it's really a massive step towards in the right direction. And I think what maybe something missing is who is paying for that, because we're changing of structure. Who's going to pay for this? And again, it's where I think the government will be very, helpful from the government to ensure that the producer of equipment, of items is paying for the management of the waste.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Wayne, just very briefly, one thing you'd like from government.
Oh God, I don't care. I don't care, honestly. I really can't be bothered with that question because I am fed up of holding my breath for government to do anything. If they do something, that's great. Just don't do any damage.
Leave us alone.
Yeah, leave us. Crack on. Cities act.
Brilliant.
Governments talk. That's my view.
Well, Stephen King, Justin King of Sainsbury's told Defra, he said, "Leave us alone, we'll sort it." But they didn't. So there's another thing. Final word.
One serious, one flippant one. So the serious one is be leaders and procure based on outcomes. Procure what you want the thing to do, rather than trying to get the cheapest cost delivery of something that may do what you want. And then cost lots of money. And the flippant one, stop calling them green taxes, they're pollution taxes.
Yes, very good.
Okay, cool. Right, just one final comment, because I know we've got to wrap up. I hear the word innovation used a lot, and I just want to remind everyone that it's the successful commercialization of an idea. In other words, you have to make money from it. Yeah. I get sent stuff probably every day from a company saying, "I've got this new idea, it's an innovation." No, it's not, it's an idea. It's maybe an invention, it might have some degree of novelty to it, but unless it makes money commercially, it's not an innovation. I just want to say this message, because I think we need to get that clear. It has to be commercially successful. If it's not economically viable, it's not sustainable, and there's a lot of circular economy businesses out there that won't be around in 2 weeks, let alone a year. So if any of you entrepreneurs out there, I just want to ram that home. It's important to make money. That sounds a bit Tory-like, doesn't it? Anyway, would you like to thank the speakers again for me? Excellent, thank you.